Hyupadhavat samahitaha karmano dhavasanena somapan itaran api Uddhavasya sahartvigbhi sasnav avabritam tataha. Word for word. Rudram, Lord Shiva. Cha, and. Svena, with his own. Bhagena, share. He, since. Upadhavat, he worshipped. Samahitaha, with concentrated mind. Karmana, by the performance. Uddhavasena, Uddhavasanena, by the act of finishing. Samapan, demigods. Itaran, others. Api, even. Uddhavasya, after finishing. Saha, along with. Ritvigbihi, with the priests. Sasnau, bathed. Avabritam, the avabrita bath. Tataha, then. Translation. With all respect, Daksha worshipped Lord Shiva with his share of the remnants of the yajna. After finishing the ritualistic sacrificial activities, he satisfied all the other demigods and the other people assembled there. Then, after finishing all these duties with the priests, he took a bath and was fully satisfied. Purport. Lord Rudra, Shiva, was properly worshipped with his share of the remnants of the yajna. Yajna is Vishnu, and whatever prasad is offered to Vishnu is offered to everyone, even Lord Shiva. Sridhar Swami also comments in this connection, Svena Bhagena, the remnants of the yajna are offered to all the demigods and others. Srila Prabhupada ki. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet mukam karoti vachalam pangulam gayate grimya kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanyameshwaram Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Indridumna Swami Tinamine Nama Prabhupada Priyasaya Jagannathi Yatra Nandamurtaye Bhakta Sukena Krishna Kirtanena Narsimhena Rakshataya Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuye Evacha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay. So now this chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is finishing, and we can see that everything is getting wrapped up very nicely after the great sacrifice and then the destruction of the sacrifice. Then again Vishnu comes and blesses everyone after all the cursing finished. So now everything is being wrapped up at the end of this chapter. It's pretty much the second or third last verse of this chapter, and therefore you can see it's a descriptive verse. It's simply describing the scene, the situation. And from this pastime of Daksha, the whole pastime of the sacrifice of Daksha, everything that happened before and after, we can learn many wonderful lessons. And I think one of the ones that are most common, or you can understand most easily from this whole pastime, is the futility of karma kanda, or the futility of performing ritualistic activities for material desires or material benefit, right? And how complex and difficult it is to perform. In this connection, we can see that after the sacrifice that Daksha performed, he did not regain his previous stature or his previous opulence and facility as before the sacrifice. After the sacrifice, of course, he had, after that, the head of a goat. And because of his repentive attitude and the beautiful prayers he offered to Lord Shiva, he was forgiven from his offense to Lord Shiva, but he did not regain his opulence, his power, his level of enjoyment as he had previously. And later in this canto, we will see that to regain his previous position, he had to perform many, many millions of years of austerities. It's actually described that he performed, this whole pastime happened at the time of Swayambhuva Manu, the first Manu out of the 14 Manus. And he performed austerities for the duration of 5 Manus, right? And we understand that one Manu lives the length of 300 million years, right? So 5 Manus means 1,500,000 million, 1,500,000 years, right? 500 million years, my bad. 1,500,000,000 years. Yeah, so he performed austerities for a very, very long time. And at the end of those austerities, he gave up his body again and was born as the son of Marisha, the wife of the Prachetas. Right? He was born again. Marisha. She was the wife of the Prachetas. And then only was he able to regain his previous opulence and stature and position and enjoyment, simply because of this offense he committed at the lotus feet of Lord Shiva. Right? So we can understand in this connection that all these materialistic activities, karma kanda activities that one wants to perform to achieve better life in this world or elevation to the heavenly planets, are very difficult to perform, because if there's even the tiniest mistake or the tiniest oversight in some of the activities, the result can be the opposite from what you desire. Right? Daksha was performing this sacrifice to become more opulent, to become more happy, and instead he died. He got the head of a goat. Everything was destroyed. Then he had to perform austerities just to get back to where he was before the sacrifice. Right? And he had to die again. It's described he had to die twice. Once before the head of the goat, and once again to be born again as the son of Marisha. Right? So more than the opposite, you can say, happened because of his oversight, because of his pride. I'm performing this great sacrifice, look at my opulence, and therefore he offended a pure devotee. And this same story, or these same examples, you'll find all over the Bhagavatam, as in later on we'll see in the pastime of Indra when he commits an offense to his spiritual master Brihaspati, and because of that the demigods are defeated by the demons. They go to Brahma and they ask what to do, and Brahma says, go to Vishwarupa. Vishwarupa was the son of the Brahmana Tvashta, right? So he goes to Vishwarupa and he asks him to please become their priest. But at that time, Brahma warned Lord Indra to be careful when worshipping or when using Vishwarupa as your priest, because he is descendant of the Asura lane, right? His grandfather was an Asura. And so in his sacrifices, he favors sometimes the demons. But do not take any offense, Brahma told him. Do not think about that. You're right, he's still a pure devotee, he's still a pure Brahmana, and he will take care. He will do the sacrifices properly. But after they regained their kingdom and everything, Indra became again, how would I say, he became paranoid, again, as always, that they're going to come and take his kingdom, some Brahmin's going to come take his kingdom. And so he became very disturbed that Vishwarupa, while he was performing sacrifices, was also offering shares to the demons. And as Indra does, he acts sometimes without thinking. He killed Vishwarupa, right? He killed Vishwarupa, who was the son of a Brahmana, Tvashta, a very powerful Brahmana. And so this Brahmana, seeing the mistake that Indra made, decided to create another son who would be powerful enough to defeat Indra. And therefore he did another sacrifice. But in this sacrifice, as is mentioned in Bhagavatam, he made a mistake of, instead of saying Indra Astro, he said Indra Astro, long A, which means basically that you would have, instead of saying that I want a son who will be able to kill Indra, it was have a son who will be killed by Indra. So by making one mistake in his pronunciation, the opposite effect came by his sacrifice, right? The opposite, exact opposite effect that he wanted came through as the result of this mistake he made. And therefore Vritrasura was born, who was a great devotee, and in Bhagavatam We hear his instructions to Indra and instructions to the demigods. But the exact opposite happened, that this demon, this son of Twashta, was killed by Indra because of that mistake in the sacrifice that he made. So this small little mistake can give one the opposite result of one's austerities, of one's penance, of one's yajna. And therefore, we understand the futility of karma kanda and the uselessness of all these kinds of sacrifices, Vedic sacrifices, in which the goal is our own enjoyment, our own elevation to heavenly planets. Right? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, right, that everyone in this material world has to perform sacrifice. Right? When one is born in this material world, one is automatically dependent on so many living beings, both demigods and in this material, and in earth. We're dependent on so many other things just for our sustenance, right? We're dependent on the rain, we're dependent on everything. And so Krishna says, right? He says, in the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifice for Vishnu and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." Right? Krishna says that you must perform sacrifice. Right? But those whose intelligence have been stolen by material desires surrender unto the demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Right? So Krishna goes into great detail in the Bhagavad Gita describing the different natures of these of beings with material desires, those in the mode of goodness, in the mode of passion, the mode of ignorance, the kind of worship they perform, what results they're looking for, right? And this is all because their intelligence have been stolen by material desires. Krishna says it very clearly, right? And therefore you see that the ultimate goal of all Vedas, of all the Vedas, is ultimately for Haritoshana, as described, right? It's for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. But when one is desiring to enjoy separate from Lord Vishnu, therefore all these impediments come up, all these problems come up, and therefore one has to suffer the results of his activities, if they're good or if they're bad, right? Karma bandhana, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, they're binding one to this material world, right? Either good or bad, they bind one to this material world, and we want to break this cycle of karma kanda, break this cycle of bondage to this material world, in which if we perform a good activity, we do not want to enjoy the results of that good activity either. We don't want to be born again to go to Indra or to go to different lokas, to be born as a rich person. We don't want to. We want to we want to end the cycle of samsara, end the cycle of karma. And therefore, even the good activities that we perform, we should not perform it for any desire for material pleasure, rather simply for the pleasure of the Lord. And in that way, we break the cycle of karma, both good and bad, right? So we can understand that these karma kanda rituals, these karma kanda sacrifices that are there, very, very difficult for us to perform. And especially in this age, when we understand that the only process, right, is Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama eva kevalam, Kalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva katiranyata, right? There's no other way except the holy name of the Lord. Right? So by performing this sacrifice, the Harinam Sankirtan sacrifice, therefore we can free ourselves from the bondage of karma, both good and bad. And in a lecture, Srila Niranjan Swami, he mentions that even the Sankirtan Yajna must be performed simply for the pleasure of the Lord. If one performs the Sankirtan Yajna with Sakam Karma Bhakti, with desires, it will not give the desired effect of full freedom from this material world. It's very difficult because in that way it is Namabhas, or the shadow of the holy name. And it'll slowly, it'll be purifying you. It will purify you, but it'll take time. Rather, performance of Sankirtan Yajna solely for the satisfaction of the Lord gives one the highest benefit, which is the pleasure of the Lord. And when the Lord is happy, everything else is taken care of. Right? As it's mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Right? Devarshi bhutapta nirnam pratinam nanayam kinkaro charajan sarvatma yas saranam charanyam gato mukundam parihritya krityam. Right? It says, O king, one has given up all material duties and has taken full shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda. One who offers shelter to one who offers shelter to all, is not indebted to the demigods, great sages, ordinary living beings, relatives, friends, mankind, or even one's forefathers who have passed away, since all such classes of living entities are part and parcels of the Supreme Lord. One who has surrendered to the Lord's service has no need to serve such persons separately. So it says here very clearly in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 11.5.41 that if one fully surrenders to the Lord, Lord Mukunda. Mukunda means one who offers liberation, or one who offers freedom from this material world to all. He is no longer indebted to the demigods, the pitris, right, the kings, the any of the other living entities in the material world, because automatically, by pleasing him, everyone else is pleased. Right? The analogy is always given that the material world, or the manifestation of the Virat Purusha, is a great tree. And by watering the roots of the tree, or Krishna, all the plant becomes satisfied and fruitful, right? So you do not need to separately worship each individual demigod for different desires that we have. We simply go to Lord Krishna, and by worshipping him, everything else will be taken care of. You still see sometimes in different places in the world where demigod worship is very predominant, right? Even amongst the devotee communities, sometimes you'll see there'll be an altar and there'll be Radha Krishna on it, but then also Shiva, Brahma, Ganesh, Durga, Saraswati, all the other demigods are there because they're very fearful that if you miss someone out, just like Daksha, they'll become angry and then I'll get the bad karma. So they do not have the faith yet in devotional service that by worshiping Krishna, everything else will be taken care of. And so you'll see pictures of everybody on the wall, right? Or deities of everyone on the wall, just to make sure all the bases are covered. You know, we don't want to miss anyone out. Otherwise, like Daksha, that same thing will happen to me, right? But it's very difficult, and one has to get the firm faith in this verse of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, or first firm faith in the instructions of the Lord, that by worshiping him, everyone else will be satisfied. So this is something that we have to cultivate. This is something that we have to understand, that there's no need for everything else. And on top of there's no need, it is not a foolproof way, because just as we see so many examples in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that someone does a performance of sacrifice, but because of some small mistake or some offense, everything is ruined, like in the pastime of Daksha, like in the pastime of Twashta, right? Everything is ruined because of some small mistake. So how can we put our faith in a system that's so difficult to do? And not only that, it's very dangerous, right? It's very dangerous to perform. Why not choose the easy path, in a foolproof path, that by worshiping the Lord, everything will be taken care of. And not only that, he'll get rid of our desires for those things, right? It's the medicine and the cure and the goal, everything is there in the holy name, right? So sometimes in our Krishna conscious movement, we're still performing quote-unquote fire sacrifices or sacrifices in that way, but we have to be very clear and understand our intention. Our intention is simply to please the Lord. And therefore the mistakes that we inevitably perform in our sacrifices do not cause us the same karma, because we have no desire for any result. Right? We are doing a yajna every Saturday for Lord Nrsimhadev for his pleasure. Right? And what are we chanting in the yajna? Are we saying, give me this, give me that, please take this, give me that? No. We're simply saying, describing his qualities, describing his pastimes, describing his glories. It's another form of Sankirtan, simply in the way of a yajna. And why do we perform a yajna? It's for our benefit, because we see it's a samskara. It's something that gives an impression on the mind. Right? As we know, before Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, there was no yajnas in initiation ceremonies in our line of Gaudiya Sampradaya. It was simply that the Guru and the disciple would meet, and simply by giving the holy name or giving the Gopal Gayatri or whatever Gayatri was used, that was sufficient. And that was sufficient enough for a samskara, for the devotee to go through the rest of his life and take it seriously. But Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur understood the importance of a samskara to make an impression on the mind, something that happens, right? And so therefore the person can think, no, I took initiation, this happened, I remember the yajna, I remember the day, everyone was present, right? And it becomes an impression on the mind that the person remembers, and he will take it more seriously. In other sampradayas, we see that they also have other forms of samskaras, even more, rigid and more, I don't want to say gross, but more yeah, complex. Like in the Madhvas, they have the branding, right? The Shankha Chakra branding. That's a very strong samskara, right? You take it, and some people do it daily. They'll do their morning yajna, and they have the Shankha Chakra in the fire of the yajna. After the yajna is finished, they brand themselves. And it's a form of tilaka, and for them it's a form of purification. So in that way they're constantly remembering the samskara, and it becomes a very strong impression in the mind. Right? Why do they do that? It's for us to remember that this happened. Just like we come to Mangalarti. We come to Mangalarti, we come to Darshanarti, we chant our rounds. For what purpose? So that we are conscious, we've seen the Lord, and for the rest of the day we can hopefully maintain that level of Krishna consciousness. If we don't do something physical in this level of sadhana bhakti, it's very difficult for us to be conscious of the Supreme Lord. At the level of Raganuga Bhakti, we're always conscious of the Lord, and therefore it's described, right, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, I think it's described that the pure devotee, right, he doesn't need to wake up at a certain time, go to sleep at a certain time, worship the Lord at a certain time, because he's always worshiping the Lord. But we at this level of sadhana bhakti, we have to have things that are constant samskars, that are constant impressions on the mind to keep us conscious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We come to Mangalarti, and at least maybe until Darshanarti we'll be conscious. Then we come to Darshanarti, at least until noon we'll be conscious. We come to noon, at least until the afternoon we'll be conscious. And so like that, by following the sadhana bhakti and worship of the Lord, it's helping us increase the amount in the day where we're conscious of the Lord. So it goes from 10% to 20% to 30%, like that. We can slowly increase the amount of the day in which we're fully conscious of the Lord. And all this is through samskara. Samskara simply means impression on the mind. Something that makes us remember, something that we can relate to. Right? In the Pradambika Kalpa Manjari described by Gopabhata Goswami, and I can't remember who wrote this, but he's describing how everything in the day that we perform is a form of deity worship. It's a form of worship to the Lord. From waking up, going to the bathroom, taking bath, cleaning our tongue, how every single activity in the day that we perform can be directly related to our deity worship, related to our sadhana, related to it. And the reason why he does this, he describes very clearly, is simply so that while we're brushing our teeth, we can understand that we're doing this as a direct service to Krishna. Why do we brush our teeth? So that our mouth is clean. So that when we chant the holy name of the Lord, it's coming in a clean place, right? The Lord comes and dances on our tongue when we chant the holy name. We clean our tongue so he has a clean place. When we speak to other devotees, we don't, this foul odor doesn't come out, right? So it's direct service. Why do we clean our bowels in the morning as soon as we wake up? Because this material, this mala that's inside of us, right? If we don't get it out, as soon as the sun rises, what happens? The stomach wakes up. And when the stomach wakes up, it starts digesting again what's inside of us. And so if that's not out of there, those toxins go into the body and the entire body becomes impure. Right? And you cannot perform puja in such an impure state. You cannot. Going to the bathroom, cleaning our bowels in the morning. According to Ayurveda, it's described this should be done before the sunrise. Right? Because at sunrise, everything in the body wakes up. Not only the living entities wake up, but the sun actually wakes up our organs inside our body. We don't even notice. And so if you do not, according to Ayurveda, if you do not use the bathroom before the sunrise, those toxins go into the body. It's basically the day before is prasadam that's there, right? That's all supposed to be given away, but instead it starts getting digested again. And those toxins start going into the body, and the body is no longer pure. Sometimes also, if you follow the rules of Ayurveda properly, you'll notice that even your body doesn't smell as much because those toxins didn't go back into the body and they're properly being released. Right? So why do you go to the bathroom? So that you're clean to perform puja, to come in front of the Lord. Right? Why do we take a bath? For the same reason. Not only do we take a bath, they say there's so many different rules in Shastra. If you sleep longer than 45 minutes, you're supposed to take a bath. Why 45 minutes? Why is it described 45 minutes? It's because within 45 minutes, the mind goes to such a level of ignorance that to be able to get yourself out of that ignorance to the level of puja clean, a bath is necessary. To clean oneself, to get yourself out of that level of ignorance. Because you can experience it yourself. You sleep longer than 45 minutes, you're in a certain level of tamaguna, and it takes sometimes 2-3 hours to get back to the same level of awakeness or awareness even. So what to speak of to perform puja is described 45 minutes, right? But at least in the night when we wake up, we're at such a level of ignorance, by cleaning oneself, one is able to more easily chant the holy name, focus on the Lord, right? Then why do we eat in the morning? Of course we eat only after the Lord eats, but eating his Krishna Prasad is direct service to him. But not only that, by eating Krishna Prasad, it's another form of meditation for us. And so we become more conscious of the Lord. And so like that, very carefully, every single activity in the day is described. And in that way, we can be more conscious of the Lord, even when we're doing such a basic materialistic, so-called materialistic things. Cleaning ourselves, right? Cleaning the house, cleaning our bed, taking care of ourselves, applying tilak, which of course is direct devotional service. And in this way, our sadhana bhakti are all full of samskaras to help us be more conscious of the Lord. Right? Everything is there for us to be more conscious of the Lord. So these ritualistic activities described in the Vedas that are there for our own material sense gratification are not foolproof, as mentioned before. It's not foolproof, and it's very risky. As we see in this pastime, the opposite, more than the opposite effect was given to Daksha because of the mistake of pride. Right? So we follow our sadhana bhakti, we follow our devotional service, we perform Sankirtan Yagya, and we try as much as we can to perform it 100% for the pleasure of the Lord, not for our own material gratification or enjoyment. And in that way, slowly, 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 we'll be purified from the anarthas of material desires and be able to perform everything we do 100% for the Lord. And then we'll be freed from this material world, or even freed from the desire for anything and fully surrendered to the desire of the Lord. If he wishes us to be in this material world, birth after birth, preaching, we will be so surrendered that that will be very happy and considered the highest bliss. Right? This is another thing that sometimes devotees, it's considered, oh, when I go to the spiritual world, I want to be a gopi, or I want to be a cowherd boy, or I want to be, a parent or a family member of Krishna. But we have to understand that whatever situation we end up in the spiritual world, we're going to be supremely happy, unlimitedly happy, right? Because in that situation, that was our eternal relationship with the Lord, and there is no discrepancy. There's nothing that we are lacking in that relationship, right? Uddhava, one of the greatest devotees of the Lord, he desired to be a blade of grass surrounding Govardhan. Right? He wanted to be a clump of grass so that the gopis would come and walk over him on their way to see Krishna. And maybe during the rasa dance, he would be so lucky to have their lotus feet touch his head. That's Uddhava. Who are we to consider that, no, I have to be a gopi? Not any gopi, I want to be closest to, no. Right? Previously, when devotees used to go to Radhakund, sometimes to the Babajis, they used to go, and these Babajis weren't all exalted devotees, and so they used to give something called Siddha Pranali, which is what they describe who you are in the spiritual world. Of course, it wasn't real, right? And you could even see that many of the Western devotees would get, gopis forms or things like that because they would give more dakshina if they got a better form, right? So, oh, you're this such and such a gopi, oh, very good, here's 1,000 rupees. Oh, you're a cow, okay, only 10 rupees. Right, so they weren't very happy. So they would give very advanced, elevated Siddha Pranalis to the devotees, and it was all nonsense. Right? It's not a business in that way. Whatever form you're going to get in the spiritual world, you're going to be eternally happy, and you cannot artificially have that form revealed to you prior to the stage where you're ready. Right? I was listening to a lecture by my spiritual master, Srilendra Swami, and he's describing how there's 3 people in this creation, spiritual and material, who can experience Mahabhav, or the same exit. 3 people, only 3 people. One of the people is Srimati Radharani. Now you can see how special it is. The second person is Mahaprabhu. And the third person is Madhavendra Puri. Right? There's 3 people in the whole creation, both spiritual and material, who can experience Mahabhav. The same ecstasy that Srimati Radharani feels. Krishna cannot experience it. Mahaprabhu experiences it. Right? And one of those people is Madhavendra Puri. And who is Madhavendra Puri in the spiritual world? He's a kalpavriksha tree. He's a tree. He's one of the 3 people in the spiritual world who experiences Mahabhav, and he's a tree. So how can we say that no, only gopis are, I only want to be a gopi or a gopa or such and such? No. He's one of the greatest devotees in the universe, in entire creation, and he's a Kalpavriksha tree, and he's supremely happy in that situation. Right? So we have to aspire to that level of surrender to understand and have full faith in Krishna that this process of devotional service is foolproof. We do not need any other situation. We do not need any other form of sacrifice in which to fulfill our other desires that we have. And in that way, we can fully surrender unto the Lord and give up all these other desires that we might have. Right? So today, since it was more of a descriptive verse, I wasn't able to find that much resources to describe or to speak on this verse, but I thought maybe we could do longer questions and answers if anyone has. And huh? But it was more a summary of the entire chapter. So we'll finish here, and please, any questions or comments, most welcome. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Mike Jagger. So on this last point what you made, I'm very happy that you made this point, because I think the problem is when we desire to be a particular form in the spiritual world, most of it's because of still we want to sense gratificate. Because many times I hear the devotees saying, "Oh, when I'm with Krishna, then I can play with Krishna." But it's not that we go in the spiritual world to play with Krishna, to enjoy. We go back to the spiritual world to be enjoyed. And this is what you said, is this level of surrender that we say, whatever, I want to be enjoyed. If you enjoy by kicking me or giving me a hard time, if this is what you like, if you want to keep me in the snow, so that's your desire. And there was one question or one thing what would could say what Prabhupada says in Nectar of Devotion. One should choose a character in the spiritual world and kind of meditate upon this character and follow that. What is sort of kind of Siddha Pranali, you choose yourself, whatever, you choose yourself. But I think there's also our process of to discover ourself, where we were going. So the question could be, is there some more from your side, some more clarification to this point? And another question was, when you spoke about samskaras, imprint of the mind, but it's also not only on the subtle level. There's also some cross. It's like I always when I do some scores, I always say it's like downloading an application or something like that. So it's also some cross experience what one can have, especially when before the baby, before the birth or something like that. So how much effect nowadays, since we all not Vedic chanters, how much is the effect if we don't pronounce all the mantras as you described, as in this, what was his name, the Brahmana who made a sacrifice?
Tvashta.
Yeah.
Tvashta.
So, or is faith enough?
This is a really wonderful question, Prabhu. Thank you. I'll first deal with the samskara question, then the other one. It's very beautifully, Prabhupada very nicely describes how we do not have sufficient intelligence or sufficient knowledge to be able to offer, make prayers, let's say, to the Lord, right? And therefore, if we're not able to, we should take from the sastras, we should take from the songs of the acharyas that are so perfect. And by singing them, we can I would say follow in their footsteps, and therefore Krishna will be pleased through their prayers that they offered. And we try to emulate that desire that we have. So in the form of samskaras, there's so many wonderful prayers that are meant for different things, right? And ultimately, all the samskars that we perform as devotees, we're simply asking Krishna in different forms to protect or to help us go through whatever we're going through, whether that be birth, name giving, all the samskars leading up to Antyeshti, which is, the immersion of ashes. And so, by chanting those mantras that are meant to particular reasons, we are offering them to the Lord with the desire that He helps us get through whatever we're doing. And so therefore we're using the prayers offered by different great devotees in the sastras to pray to the Lord. And that's completely right. And the Lord will fulfill those desires because of the purity of the prayers offered by the great devotees that we are offering to Him. Right? They're not our prayers, they're not something that we are making up to give to Him. No, we're using them. And so in that way He will give us what he desires to give us, obviously, but He will fulfill those desires of His devotees because it's the love that we're offering them with that He accepts. So these samskars, as you say, it's a gross materialistic activity in which we are offering particular offerings to the Lord for a particular desire. But especially in the form of samskars, they're all direct devotional service, because what are we asking for in those samskars? Are we asking for wealth, opulence? No, we're asking, let this child be a devotee of yours. Let this child have the ability to serve you in such and such a way. Let him be your servant. Let him be purified so he becomes a pure devotee of you. Right? So samskar after samskar, all we're asking for is service to the Lord and to be engaged in His service throughout our life. And so in that way we can replicate the emotion or the offerings that those great sages or great devotees are giving Him with our own little bit of love that we can add on, right? Piggyback on their offerings, and therefore get the result, which is more service to the Lord. So in that way it is Sankirtana, it is worshipping the Lord by His name's form and qualities. But in a gross situation in which we are offering for a particular purpose. But it's a particular purpose of devotional service. So in that way it's pure and it's perfect. And it's not in any way material. And then we shouldn't downgrade it by saying that, faith is enough, or faith is the only thing that really matters, and therefore we put no effort into chanting the mantras properly, learning the mantras properly. No. We want to do it to the best of our ability, right? And that effort Krishna sees as well. But it's the power in the mantras, or let's say in the power in our love when we offer it with the certain mantras, that the Lord will accept. He sees the effort. If we put zero effort, then the Lord will see that. So therefore it's the love and intention that we have for Him that gives the result at the end of the day. But we do not have the sufficient love, or how would I say, unlimited raganuga bhakti that we can just, think for a certain thing and that thing will happen, or that thing will offer to the Lord. Therefore, there's so many different prescribed sadhana bhakti ways in which we worship the Lord. Just like deity worship, there's mantras, there's situations, there's regulative prescribed ways in which to serve the Lord. We don't just, invent something day by day as we want. So the samskaras are the same thing. We want to perform the samskara to please the Lord so that He blesses the devotee and so he can perform devotional service. Right? And this connection is described also, Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes Kirtaniya Sada Hari, right? Eternally chant the name of the Lord. But until such a stage that we're ready to go to the spiritual world, we have to maintain this material body. So we can be Kirtaniya Sada Hari, so we can chant the holy name of the Lord. And if we don't take care of this material body, we will have an untimely death. And if you have an untimely death, you're not ready to go back to Godhead at that point. And so therefore you have to take birth again. So why? Better maintain this material body to a level in which it's capable to continue chanting the holy name of the Lord, continue performing your service and your duties, until such a point that you're ready to go back to Godhead. So he describes it like that. And so therefore part of maintenance of the material body is the 4 ashrams. Part of the 4 ashrams are samskaras. And so therefore they're extremely important to perform. And it's not simply, faith is what drives it, but we use the mantras as a vessel in which to offer our devotion, our love, our intention to the Lord. And therefore they're perfect. Is that okay, Prabhu?
Yeah, just one more thought what came now when you explained it. I get the point, we should use the mantras, prayers, songs, whatever, by our choice. But, for example, I'm how to say, devotees using me to make up prayers all the time, to pray for whatever stuff. So what about that?
But
Am I condemned?
No. But Prabhu, what do you do after you're offering the prayer simply almost like a sankalpa, right? You're telling the Lord, this is the situation, please do such and such, and then what do? You offer Nrsimha Kavacha, you offer Ugra Viram, you offer the mantras with Tulsi, you're offering all the prescribed ways of worshiping the Lord. It's not that you're doing it instead of, it's simply another thing. Understand? It's kind of like you have a Rajbhog plate in which you offer it to the Lord. Certain things have to be there. But if one day we decide to make something extra, it's great, but we don't put it in exchange what his standard offerings are, what's prescribed. So we have the way in which we offer the Lord. If we want to do something extra, that's okay as long as it's within the boundaries. But the way how you do it, Prabhu, is simply like a sankalpa almost, you could say, in which you're describing the Lord, this is the situation, these are the circumstances, please help them in such and such a way, right? And then you make the puja, and then you perform the worship of the Lord just like you do every day, and therefore the Lord is conscious of that. He's always conscious, but you're simply informing him, just like you need help from your father, from your friend, you tell them the situation. So, and therefore it's not that you're simply making up things, no, you're simply informing the Lord of his situation. So there's also two ways of looking at that, that not to create your own prayers and things like that. It's not that it's wrong, it's just that we should first understand our relationship to Krishna and understand the situation and the way in which we should pray to him. And how do we do that? By reading the acharyas, by reading the songs of the acharyas, by reading the books of Srila Prabhupada. This chapter itself is hundreds of prayers by the demigods, by the Vidyadharas, by the Gandharvas, by Indra, by Daksha. And we can see the way in which they're offering the prayers, how they're speaking to the Lord, their humility, their descriptions, their glorifications. And in that way we have an example. After that, then if we have to offer something extra, we do, if we would like to. And it's perfect and complete because we're taking their example. We're not artificially inventing things. Right? You'll see so many times also, like in the story of Jayadev Goswami or in the story of Rupa Goswami. I'll tell them both. Jayadev Goswami, he's writing Gita Govinda. And in his deep meditation in the pastimes of the Lord, he sees the Lord Krishna in trying to pacify Radharani's man, her anger. He says, please give me your lotus feet on top of my head. Dehi pada pallava mudharam. Please give your lotus feet upon my head. And Jayadev Goswami flips out. He's in his meditation. He sees that and he's like, no, this cannot be. I must be inventing something. This cannot be right. And so he's so scared that he committed an offense that he scrubs it out of the book, right? He crosses it out. And he says, no, I need to go take bath. I need to take the time to think. I'm starting to invent. He was so scared that he's inventing something and not following in the prescribed way that the pastime happened. And so he goes to take bath. And in the meantime, Padmavati Devi, his wife, is making lunch ready, so when he comes back, he can have prasadam. All of a sudden, after a short while, Jayadev Goswami comes back into the house and says, I'm just going to go write something in my book. Please have prasadam ready. So Padmavati Devi quickly gets the plate ready, has it there. Jayadev Goswami comes out of his room, eats prasadam with Padmavati Devi, and then says, okay, I'm going to go for a walk. So Padmavati Devi sits down and starts eating the prasadam. And then Jayadev Goswami comes again, wet from the Ganga, and says, Padmavati Devi, what are you eating? How are you eating before I eat? You're a perfect wife. You've never done this before. What is this weird, situation that you're showing now? He says, what are you talking about? You just came, wrote something in your book, ate and left, and now I'm eating. What are you talking about? And so Jayadev Goswami understood that something must have happened. So he went inside, and written again on top of that spot was Dehi pada pallavam udharam. Please give your lotus feet upon my head. So he realized that Krishna himself came and wrote into the book that, give me this. Give me your lotus feet upon my head. Right? So he's so scared that he's inventing something, but Krishna showed him that it's the proper way. And then in the case of Rupa Goswami is describing also, no, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I forgot. He's describing that Radharani's hair looks like a cobra, like the hood of a cobra, like the body of a cobra. The braid of Radharani going down her back. And so Sanatana Goswami read that, and he said that how can you describe the hair of Radharani as a snake? He said, this cannot be right. You should have described it as something more beautiful. Why is a snake? And so he didn't get on his case, but he corrected Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami, being so humble, he said yes, of course. And then he's went into his samadhi again, trying to think about some other way to describe Radharani in that verse. And so that day, Sanatana Goswami was going to Radhakund to take bath, and across the other side of Radhakund, he saw some Brajbasi girls playing, and one of the girls were there playing, and he saw a snake going up her back onto her head. And so he said, "Hey, watch out, there's a snake." And they didn't hear him. So he started running across, and he's running, and he's about to reach the girl, and the girl turns around, and he sees his Radharani. And the cobra on her head, right? It looked just like a cobra. And so in the ecstasy of seeing Radharani, he fainted, and Radharani disappeared, and he understood his mistake. So he went and told Rupa Goswami the pastime and said, "You're perfectly right." Right? So in these cases, these Goswamis are even worried about inventing or going out of the proper lineage of prayers to the Lord. And these are quite extreme situations. But you can see the care and attention they're putting into following into the footsteps of the acharyas when describing, writing about the pastimes and different things. So we should not invent pastimes. We should not invent situations. If we're following into the prescribed ways of prayers that is described by the acharyas and by great devotees in the past, then there's nothing wrong in what we're doing. But we cannot invent pastimes, so to speak. Yes, sir.
How do we know when we invent and when we revealed and when we invent?
Well, once we reach that level of Raganuga Bhakti in which we're seeing the pastimes of the Lord, then I think we'll hopefully, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and the great devotees, we'll be able to see the Lord, and it won't be questionable in our mind if we're seeing it for real or if we're just inventing it in our mind.
Acharyas afraid, as you described, to invent something, and I guess when you're on that level, then you would not even consider yourself on that level.
Exactly.
So you would not think, you know what I mean. So
yes.
The border is not clear, I guess, and even one maybe want to wipe out, kind of want to keep oneself on the safe side of sadhana, because therefore, because it's a safe side, therefore, even the great devotees, they stay on that side. They don't say, "Oh, now I'm do Raganuga Bhakti."
Yeah. No, they will never say, that way, and especially in the case of the acharyas that we're speaking of, Jayadev Goswami, Rupa Goswami, they're preaching to us, so they're writing books for us to read, and so they're even more careful that we do not misinterpret, so we do not misunderstand, because they're sharing their intimate understandings of the Lord with us. And so in those cases, they're even more careful, right? And that's why these examples came up. But in the case of the acharyas who are focused on preaching, you'll see that they're even controlling their own Raganuga Bhakti, their own experiences of ecstatic love, so to be able to continue preaching, right? There's like examples of Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes, he would start singing Jai Radha Madhava and his voice would choke up. He couldn't speak anymore. But then he would almost like shrug it off in order to give the class. It wasn't, he would control himself in order to give the class. So it was almost like an impediment for his preaching, so he would stop. He could continue enjoying the ecstatic love of thinking about Radharani's pastimes at Madhava and the song that he loved so much, but he would stop himself from this expression of ecstatic love in order to continue preaching. And we see that in other places also. So the acharyas who are in this mood of ecstatic love, but are preaching in the mode of preachers, they will never broadcast or say, that I am experiencing such and such. No. Then it's, yeah.
Because this was Prabhupada's service.
Yes.
Not to come to
enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Prabhupada's mood or Prabhupada's service in this material world is preaching. He didn't come as a, great rasika. He was preaching. That was his focus. Yeah, wonderful. And the other question you had, not question, was about the Siddha Pranali, or imagining a certain position in the spiritual world and working towards that. That is not the same thing as saying, I am such and such gopi, I am such and such person in the spiritual world. I have this name, I am this person. No, it's more being able to relate or to create a relationship with the Lord through, I wouldn't say visualizing, but understanding the mood of a certain pastime and trying to, work towards that level of purity. And so in that way, it's not the same, It's not the same as, saying, I am such and such manjari. It's, my service is this and this. In the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you can see all the acharyas when they would get initiation from such and such Goswami. The Goswami would say, you're such and such person, and this is your mood, and this is your seva. And they would perform it in their own sadhana bhakti. They would, boil milk for the Lord. Like Nardam Das Thakur, that was his pastime, preparing milk sweets, boiling milk for Radha and Krishna. And so he would perform it. Right, Rasikananda, he also had a very intimate pastime serving the Lord, and sometimes I can't remember. It was something he was doing to the Lord, and sometimes was it Shyamananda? Anyway, there would be physical appearances on his body, like bruises or cuts from in the forest picking flowers, scrapes, and he would hide it with his clothes so that other people didn't see. But he would go into his samadhi, into his meditation, and the things that happened to him in the spiritual world would actually stay on his body, like different colorations, the red color on her feet, on her feet, depending how you're thinking, right? And they would stay, but he would hide it. He wouldn't want people to disturb his ecstasies by bringing that out and causing, so scared of becoming proud. And so those are such high levels of devotees. But as Srila Prabhupada says, we can start creating a relationship with the Lord through a certain form or pastime that He's in, and in that way it helps us understand Him and understand our relationship to Him. But it's not that we're artificially deciding, or someone's telling us that this is who you are and this is your service and you're a gopi, so you have to dress like a gopi, etc., etc. No. That's sahaja. Yeah? Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. My question is very primitive, you might laugh. You were mentioning about the losing your bad karmas and good karmas by doing the bhakti. For me, good karmas is an impetus to perform the bhakti.
Yes.
So if we lose it, so what caused us to go forward? And how is this good work different from the pious activities?
Yes.
So what's the difference? Thank you.
Okay, very good question, Mataji. So, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes good and bad karma as being binding to this material world. And if we are looking to be good people or like to perform good activities, it's an impetus for our devotional service. So how is that something that we don't want? How is that something that we do not desire? Correct, Mataji? Right. So the answer is very simply that good or bad karma in this material world, if we, let's say you go to the shop, you give 10 rupees and you want something back, right? So I give 10 rupees, I have to get that something back, right? I perform something, I'm going to get something as a result. So I'm performing some good activities, I'm going to have to stay in this material world until I can enjoy that result of that material, of that good activities. We do not want to stay in this material world, right? Some activities do not reap results in this same life. Right? Like, for example, different ritualistic activities that you can perform to be elevated to the heavenly planets. Right? We do not want to do that because we don't want to go to the heavenly planets. Right? We do not want a lot of money, and so we don't want a lot of money for ourselves. Of course, in Krishna's service, millions and billions can be used, but it's not that we want it for ourselves, so we do not perform activities for that good result. It's not that we don't give food to hungry people, we do not, help someone in need, we do not, do so many things that you can quote unquote say are good or pious activities, but we're not performing them for the desired result. We're doing it simply because we are devotees of Krishna, we're compassionate to the living entities, we see a hungry animal, we help them, but how do we help them? Do we just help them materially? No. We chant the holy name to them, we give them some prasadam, knowing that that's going to benefit their soul, not them as a body. We're not creating hospitals in order to get material benefit. No, we're creating hospitals where prasadam will be served, where devotees are doctors, where Krishna's names will be playing all the time. Anyone who passes away in that hospital will hear Prabhupada chanting Mahamantra and will go back to the spiritual world. So it's more like a spiritual world factory, just like anyone comes in, boom, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's a teleportation device, like, so anything that we perform as devotees, we shouldn't do it with the sense of material good benefit rather than eternal good benefit to the soul. And so that physical activity may be the same, feeding the hungry. We go to Ganga Sagar every year, which is actually coming up soon, and thousands of people eat every day. But we're not like the other Karmakanda camps that are all around, made by some Birla company or Tata Cement or whatever. We're doing it because those people who are coming are eating prasadam. The activity looks the same. 1,000 people come eat, they go, another 1,000 people come eat, they go, all day eating, serving prasadam. But it's because it's prasadam, not because we're feeding the hungry. So the focus is Krishna, not the focus, I feed this hungry person, I will get 10 times back, 100 times back, 1,000 times back. Because it's Ganga Sagar Mela, you get 100 million times back the benefit. We don't care about that. We want that person to eat prasadam and become a devotee. Does that make sense? So physical activity the same, purpose very different. Yeah? What is the other question?
Ich denke, man kann sich doch vollkommen auf Krishna verlassen. Also die Erfahrung habe ich gemacht so bisher. Krishna kennt uns am besten und weiß, was uns, womit er uns erfreuen kann oder was uns am besten tut, so dass man sich da gar keine Gedanken groß machen muss, wenn man in einer Situation ist, wirklich mal in die spirituelle Welt zu kommen, dass man sich da wirklich so auf Krishna verlassen kann, was er uns zugedacht hat. Du musst das übersetzen, ja.
Ja, ist ja richtig so. Aber ich kann das nicht alles auf Stück übersetzen.
Soll ich nochmal sagen?
Aber Stück für Stück.
Also wenn man in die spirituelle Welt kommen sollte, oder egal, was man sich erhofft, man soll sich vollkommen auf Krishna verlassen, weil er uns am besten kennt.
One should completely depend on Krishna if one wants to go to the spiritual world or not. And yet you just be dependent on Krishna?
I think the point is that one should not, Kishore Kun's opinion is one should not meditate so much, or want to be this and that. When you come, one should depend on Krishna, because when you come to the spiritual world, he knows anyway what's the best situation.
Yeah, where you're going to be the most happy. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect comment. But yeah, we fully depend on Krishna because Krishna knows what we desire the most. And if we desire to please him with our full heart, with our full desire, then Krishna automatically will put us in such a situation in which we will be fully satisfied with our service to the Lord. Right? Krishna knows us better than we know ourselves, so we shouldn't, like Mataji says, we shouldn't be already thinking, I want to be such and such or such situation. We just say, I want to serve you, Krishna, like Ramananda Prabhu says, I want to serve you in whichever way you wish. Mataji said that in whichever way you wish, and in that way we will be fully happy, because the Lord will give us the certain situation in which we'll be perfectly happy to perform service to him. So yeah. Thank you, Mataji. Anything else? No? Granthara Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Śrīla Prabhupada ki, Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi.